Jean Sibelius is the most famous Finnish composer of all time and remains a significant symbol of independent Finland today. He was born on the 8th of December 1865 in the small garrison town of Hämeenlinna, where he spent his childhood and attended school. He later studied music in Helsinki, Berlin, and Vienna. In autumn 1904, he permanently settled in Ainola with his wife and 5 daughters.
My name is Alex Freeman. I'm a composer, and I've been fascinated with the music of Sibelius since I was a little kid growing up in North Carolina. I came to Finland over 20 years ago to study the sketches of Sibelius's Fourth Symphony as part of the completion of my doctoral studies at the Juilliard School in New York. Access to these original manuscript materials were tremendously important to me at that time, but at one point, the existence of the entire collection was hanging by a thread.
This is where Sibelius completed most of his works. They include 7 symphonies, the extensive 5-movement orchestral work Kullervo, and the 4-movement Lemminkäinen suite, including the Swan of Tuonela, both based on the Finnish national epic Kalevala. Tone poems such as En Saga, A Fairy Tale, Finlandia and Tapiola, and a violin concerto. In addition, Sibelius composed a great deal of stage music, such as valse triste, cantatas, choral, chamber, and piano music, as well as solo songs. At the time of his death here in Ainola on the 20th of September 1957, Sibelius was internationally renowned as one of the preeminent composers of the 20th century.
Sibelius left behind not only an extensive compositional output, but also a large and illuminating trove of manuscript material, the story of which very nearly ended here in Ainola, in this fireplace.
Today, our house was the scene for a big auto de fe, or burning ceremony. My husband had gathered a number of manuscripts in a laundry basket and burned them in the dining room fireplace. Parts of Karelia music were lost for good. I later saw the remains of torn pages, and much else besides. I did not have the strength to witness the devastation, so I retreated from the room. That is why I have no knowledge of what he threw in the fire. But afterwards my husband was calmer, and his mood brighter.
This is how Aino Sibelius depicted the incident, which is thought to have taken place in the mid-1940s. Jean Sibelius wondered often what to do with his thousands of pages of sketches and other manuscripts. He advised his son-in-law, conductor Jussi Jalas, to burn all of the sketches after his death. Why did he not destroy everything himself? Aino, for one, asked him to save the manuscripts, and perhaps he himself understood their value. He once said that the concepts created when young should not be dismissed, as they are nuggets of gold that can prove useful later on. Perhaps that is why he kept his sketches for decades. It also appears that the young Sibelius was interested in at least Beethoven's sketches, on which academic papers had been published only about 20 years or so before Sibelius studied in Berlin and Vienna.
The remaining materials in this collection have continued to be an invaluable resource to all those who study and carry on Sibelius's legacy. Today, his work is preserved here in the National Library in Helsinki, where it is available to researchers and others interested in his music. How did the archive of Sibelius's musical manuscripts come here, to this library?
We have to go back to year 1915.
1915?
Yeah, and the first edition was made Sibelius himself. After Kullar was premiered in 1892, the score was given to Robert Kajanus, who lost it. And it was lost for several years, and Sibelius was very annoyed about it.
And rightly so.
Finally, when the score was found from his own personal library,
Kajanus's.
Yeah, Kajanus personal library. The score was given back to Sibelius, and immediately he came to the library. He wanted to store it in the safest place he knew. Like we know, Sibelius was in need of money all the time.
As any composer would be.
Yeah. And that's why he had an idea that he will sell the score to the Kalevala Society. And he contacted the Kalevala Society, and they wanted to buy the original score of Kullervo. 10,000 Finnish marks was the amount of money that was needed. Sibelius got the money, Kalevala Society got the original score of Kullervo, and the very next day the score was back at the library. In 1970, there was an auction in Sotheby in London, and chief librarian Jorma Wallinkoski traveled to London and brought back 45 different manuscripts. The most important donation happened in 1982 when the Sibelius family donated the material to the library. And the condition was that the scientific catalog must be made.
And these are all the pages that Sibelius himself kept in Ainola and occasionally threatened to destroy.
Yeah, that's his archive that survived.
Kari Kilpeläinen's catalogue of the National Library of Finland's manuscript collection appeared in 1991, published by the German Breitkopf und Härtel, B&H, a key publishing house of Sibelius's works. B&H also expressed interest in publishing the complete works. The National Library eventually assumed the role of publisher, as it had over the years accumulated the largest collection of relevant sources and scholarly expertise. In 1982, Sibelius's estate decided to donate the Kullervo manuscript and other remaining items to the National Library of Finland. Before that, only a handful of individuals had access to the original manuscripts. The donation triggered a wave of new research, as scholars could now explore the composer's own original sketches, fragments, early composition versions, and unknown composition plans. The unique collection includes over 1,230 pages of manuscripts. Sibelius's grandson, Severi Blomstedt, recalls that the family had no difficulties deciding on the donation in the 1980s.
Suku piti heti ihan alusta lähtien hirveän tärkeänä, että ne tulee hyvään turvaan toisaalta ja toisaalta sitten se, että kyllä suku sen tajus, että ne on sekä kansallisesti että kansainvälisestikin erittäin arvokkaita. Tärkeitä dokumentteja, että siitä ei ollut kysettäkään, etteikö näin oltaisi mielletty asia. Ja toisaalta sitten oli myöskin niin, että pidettiin hirveän tärkeänä, että se pysyy kokonaisuutena, eikä sitä mitään irroteta pois. Puhumattakaan, että joku on keksinyt ruveta myymään joitain niistä jonnekin, että niiden arvo kyllä oikein hyvin ymmärrettiin. Ja on myöskin sellainen mahdollisuus ilmeisestikin ollut olemassa, että Sibelius olisi halunnut tuhota kaikki käsikirjoitukset, jotka täällä oli. Nythän me tiedämme, että 8. sinfonian lähes valmis käsikirjoitus tuhottiin tuossa vihreässä takassa tuolla.
What were the reasons for the donation? What prompted it? What led to it?
Tietysti ensimmäinen oli se, että ne on turvassa, niin kuin mä mainitsin, mutta toinen oli tietenkin se, että ne on tutkijoiden käytettävissä. Sitä pidettiin tärkeänä jo silloin, että ne on todella, että niitä voidaan käyttää.
The manuscript collection is important for the national cultural heritage and knowledge preservation. A well-managed collection can serve readers and scholars for decades, but requires regular attention and special expertise. As the age of the manuscripts has made them delicate, they must be protected against wear and tear, moisture, light, and mechanical damage. The controlled conditions in the National Library's collection facilities are optimal for preservation. Where possible, access to the collection will be increased through comprehensive digitization. After copyright to the Sibelius manuscript collection expires in 2027, material in this valuable and fascinating archive can be made available in digital versions to the public throughout the world. For almost 30 years, the National Library of Finland has overseen the research project Jean Sibelius Works, investigating the composer's oeuvre with the intention of publishing critical editions of his complete works. Professor Timo Virtanen is the third in succession to lead the editorial board of this major project.
How has the archive donation enabled research on Sibelius's music?
Well, the donation opened a whole new field in Sibelius's research. After that, we were able to see actually Sibelius's production as a whole, including his various kinds of manuscripts.
And so then what kinds of information was obtained from the manuscripts?
Many kinds of information, starting from early versions of his works, which were unknown until that point. Then his compositional methods, manner of composing, his notational style, which cannot be found out in the printed sources, his handwriting and the changes in his handwriting during the decades from his early years on to his last year, actually. The sketches show that Sibelius didn't always have a clear idea of the composition as a whole, but the process proceeded by trial and error, by trying which pieces in the mosaic or puzzle belonged together and which didn't belong together. And his poetic a kind of metaphor of composing as collecting the mosaic pieces together, which God has thrown down from heaven, is actually the most accurate description of the process. The manuscripts have enabled thousands of details to be corrected and clarified in the printed scores used by the musicians and researchers so far. This has an enormous effect for the performances of Sibelius's music and also research of his works.
And in that way, the archive is really an active, living entity with this legacy of Sibelius's music.
Yes, and offers work for researchers and musicians for decades.
Sibelius's legacy endures in his music and in this invaluable collection, which offers fascinating discoveries and insights to those who pursue them. What is of particular value here, and perhaps critical importance to this legacy, is that this master composer's work is accessible in its original form to both current and future generations.